Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of a Man once again, and today we're going to do something a little different. It's my week of daily uploads, and I wanted to add a few different types of videos before the end of the month, so this is one of them. Today's video is going to be a book review, like a Western novel, and yeah, please, before we start, remember to like, please subscribe if you like my content and want to see more of it, and yeah, so today we're going to review Edgar Rice Burroughs' A Princess of Mars. This was originally serialized as Under the Moons of Mars in 1912, and then it was made into a novel in 1917. Although this kind of has fallen in and out of popularity for a long time, and this is a seminal text for science fiction. This one specifically is not actually labeled as science fiction. I think it falls under the planetary romance subgenre, or Sword and Planet, depending on who you ask. But it basically means that it's a heroic fantasy type of story that features a main character who happens to be a warrior. He's trapped on a different planet, and there is generally a damsel in distress that may or may not be the love interest. That's basically what planetary romance and Sword and Planet mean. This is kind of similar to Conan the Barbarian or anything written by Robert E. Howard. And yeah, that's the introduction, I guess. This book was published by Del Rey. This is like really old. It's from the 60s, I think. Well, the story is much older, like I said earlier, but this was published in 1979. This is the 13th edition. And yeah, so this is the first book in the John Carter of Mars series. It's also been called the Barsoom series. Barsoom is the way that the Martians refer to the planet Mars. And yeah, I'm a big fan of the series. I have a couple other versions. I have this one that's the first 3 books. And then I have this one that is all 11. And this is the cover for the Disney adaptation that they did in like 2012, 2013, something like that. So because this isn't a manga or a light novel, I only can really look at 3 things. I can look at the plot, characterization, and world building. So the premise here is that this Confederate captain or soldier by the name of John Carter, through some convoluted, unclear, and rather mysterious circumstances, ends up on Mars and essentially has to survive through this ordeal of being on another planet with a whole new culture, different types of people, and you know, this seemingly impossible situation. So the plot line here is I wouldn't say it's simple, but it's not crazy intricate. This guy gets sent to Mars. He meets these alien indigenous people that are green Martians, the things that you see there. Here's another look at them. They take him in, and because he happens to be so physically able, because he has essentially has supernatural strength on Mars, and so he is respected by these green Martians for his strength, because the green Martians are a rather primitive, very barbaric and cruel type of people, and they respect strength over everything else. And then they take him in, they teach him their language, which apparently all Martian people speak the same language, and it's rather telepathically spoken, more so than verbally, which is interesting. And then through another convoluted process, he meets the princess, Deja Torres, drawn right there, who happens to be a red Martian. And so she looks rather human, except for bronze red skin. And then after they meet, there is some interpersonal tension. They get split up. Stuff happens. She is back with her people, the red Martians, but he's still stuck with the green Martians. And because during their short time together, they fall in love, he decides to do everything in his power to go help her, because apparently the red Martians that took her are the enemies of her people, of her group of red Martians. And so he has to go save her. And yeah, that's basically it. It resolves itself rather cleanly, and it's rather short as a book, so it's really enjoyable to just sit down and breeze through it. This book has 160 pages, so it's rather short, but the text is actually kind of small, so maybe it's not that short. So yeah, the plot line is interesting. I really liked it. I enjoy it a lot. So the characters, they all feel pretty interesting and intricate, even if they lack what we would think of as development in modern day writing. There's 4 characters, really. There's John Carter, Deja Torres, who's the Princess of Mars. There's Tartarchus, who is John Carter's friend amongst the Green Martians. And there's Sola, who is another one of John Carter's friends among the Green Martians. And they're really only the 2 friends that he has among the Green Martians. They are all individual and clearly distinct from each other. John Carter is the only one that has a viewpoint, which I think is actually, it's a first-person viewpoint of John Carter. And through him, you see Deja Torres as a rather pure, strong, individualistic type of woman, which I think is rather interesting. That was a thing that we see in a book from 1912. I think a lot of people would assume that she would be completely irrelevant as a character, but she's rather interesting. I think she's pretty cool and rather viable as a female character according to our standards today. There's also Tartarchus, like I said, who is the epitome of a noble savage or a noble barbarian type of thing. He and Sola both are rather odd according to the customs and culture of the Green Martians, because they are able to understand and feel love, because apparently these emotions and tendencies to form connections have been rather wiped out or bred out of the Green Martians in order to make it easier for them to survive. Yeah, it's interesting. And so because they're the only ones that are really able to display love and kindness and stuff, John Carter can interact and connect with them, but the Green Martians are still generally able to remain as antagonists to John Carter. That's basically it for the characters. I rather enjoy them, and I want to check out some of the other media that's available for John Carter. There's comic books and stuff, so I want to check them out, because I think most of them actually focus on Deja Torres instead of John Carter. So it'd be interesting to see how she's developed as an individual character. And yeah. So next is world building, and I think that's probably the best part of this book. The Earthling aspects are rather simple. There's nothing really to them, but there seems to be this like mystical, maybe scientific portal between worlds that John Carter seems to find himself in at the beginning of the book. And the Martian culture is rather very vivid and interesting, although it's very much, I feel like it's modeled after less civilized or more primitive human culture. The green men of Mars are rather what's it called, like more savage, more like the way Native Americans are portrayed in Western movies. Or very much like a Mongol horde, like the really not accurate to reality interpretation of like a tribe of warriors, which I guess some people would find problematic. I just think it's interesting. And the fact that it's fiction allows for a lot of leeway. And the Red Martians are much more equivalent to maybe Egyptian people or maybe Mesopotamians, something a little more civilized or more modern than hunter-gatherers, I guess. But they all are also very much more advanced than Earth technologically, although rather primitive in their cultural aspects. So it's an interesting dynamic that they have. It's something you don't see much nowadays, I think, for good or bad, I guess. I don't really have an opinion on that. And they have very odd and interesting focuses on religion, even though by all intent and purpose, they seem to be very pragmatic, realist in general. I think it's interesting, and although I'm not a religious person, I can see the appeal of it. And I really enjoy reading about it, even if I don't particularly believe in anything. The Green Martians are the ones that mostly show that religious aspect, although it's because that's who John Carter spends most of his time with. He doesn't really spend any time amongst red Martians except for Deja Torres. And all it really does when he is with her is show that he's completely ignorant of the way in which Martians work as people and their culture and stuff, because he's always seemingly offending Deja Torres, and though she understands that he doesn't mean to do it willfully or like in order to offend her, she still finds it a bit bad because she comes from this culture, right? And so they tend to have misunderstandings. But I guess the way that the book is written, their lack of understanding with each other is kind of what brings them closer. Like, they want to know each other and their people, so they keep gravitating towards each other, even though at any given point they like repel. It's interesting how it's written, and that's basically it. I know that there's more types of Martians, but none of them are touched on in this volume or in this book of the series. So there is that, and that's basically it. So yeah, Edgar Rice Burroughs, A Princess of Mars. I thought it was a rather good book. I definitely recommend that everyone that likes science fiction should read it because it's such a seminal, important title. And I really can't think of anything that's directly similar. Although it does share a lot of similarities with isekai, light novels and manga. Not the ones that are fantasy necessarily, because this is a much more scientific type of title. But the way that science fiction was written back in this time is very much fantastical. So there might be some similarities and some overlap there. I guess in a sense, Cooking with Wild Game, the way that Asuta and Aifa interact is rather similar to the way John Carter and Deja Torres interact. But the premise of the books is so different, and the characters are so different, that I'm not really sure that it's a good comparison or something that I can say is really similar to the book in and of itself. And yeah, that's basically it for today's video. This should be the second video I post on Thursday. If it's not, well, whenever it is that I posted it, I hope you guys had a nice day. If you guys like this content and want me to do more of it, please like and subscribe. Comment down below and let me know. If you have anything else to share, like, did you like this book? Have you read it before? Do you want to read it? Are there any other books that you think would fall under planetary romance that you want to recommend me? I'm open to all of this. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.